1917.
Representative Jernigan moves substitute form Senate Bill 1917, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Jernigan.
Mr. Speaker, I move passage of Senate Bill 1917 on third and final consideration.
Representative Jernigan moves passage of Senate Bill 1917 on third and final consideration. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Amendment 1 by Representative Bolso. Mr. Speaker, it was timely filed.
Representative Bolso, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, the bill as amended would prohibit first cousin marriage unless the parties to the marriage contract received counseling from a genetic counselor licensed by the Board of Medical Examiners. What's the reason for the amendment? The reason, ladies and gentlemen, is that the bill as drafted violates the Obergefell versus Hodges decision of the U.S. Supreme Court from 2015. Let me explain. On June 26 of 2015, the law of marriage in the United States changed radically. The Supreme Court decided that the due process and equal protection clauses of the 14th Amendment required that same-sex marriage be put on the same footing as heterosexual marriage. That decision, among other things, struck down an amendment that was approved by more than 80% of Tennessee voters, defining marriage as between a man and a woman. Obviously, in my view, Obergefell was a grievously wrong decision. It was an example of the U.S. Supreme Court acting as a super legislature. But as we stand here today, Obergefell is the law of the land. When it comes to first cousin amendment, there are three possibilities under Obergefell. Possibility number one, you have a male and a male who are first cousins who seek to become married. At committee, my good friend sponsor from Davidson County explained that the purpose of this bill was public health. That is, that the offspring of the marriage of first cousins would lead to birth defects and a risk that was not acceptable. Obviously, when it comes to a male first cousin marrying a male first cousin, there is no public health issue because two males may not conceive a child. And so we go back to Obergefell. Obergefell said very clearly that there was a fundamental right to same-sex marriage under the due process and equal protection clauses of the 14th Amendment, which means that in order for us to pass a law that restricts same-sex marriage, we have to show a compelling state interest and advance that interest, that is, protect that interest by narrowly tailored legislation. So the question is there a public health issue with a male marrying a male first cousin? Obviously, I think the answer is no. So unless somehow the sponsor or anyone else can demonstrate a public health issue with a male and male first cousin marriage, this bill violates Obergefell. The second possibility is you've got a female first cousin marrying a female first cousin. Once again, there can be no public health issue there because a female and a female cannot conceive a child. So we're left once again without a demonstration of a compelling governmental interest that is protected by narrowly tailored grounds. And then third, of course, we've got the possibility of you have a male first cousin marrying a female first cousin. There, of course, we have the ability to conceive a child. And since the time that this issue first came up last week in civil justice, I've done some additional analysis and research. And as the sponsor indicated during the committee meeting, there is an increased risk of birth defects when you've got first cousins marrying. It is in the range of 1.7% to 2.8%, according to the Journal of Genetic Counseling. So there's an additional risk, but it's not as significant as some might otherwise be led to believe. And as you all know, over the years, Dr. Francis Collins and the National Institute of Health have constructed the entire human genome. And we already understand from that research that if you have a disease such as cystic fibrosis, which has been tailored or been identified to a defective.
I'm assuming Representative Bolso moves adoption of amendment number 1. That's probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move to table this amendment that would allow first cousins to marry.
Proper motion, probably seconded. The parliamentary situation is Chairman Clemens has moved, Representative Bolso has moved amendment number 1. Chairman Clemens has moved that motion to the table. That cuts off all debate for that of the sponsor. Representative Bolso, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I would encourage you to vote against the tabling motion for the reason that it is not supported by any argument that this bill complies with Obergefell. Obviously, the rationale that's been given for the bill is that it is public health, but we know that under Obergefell, we have 3 types of first cousin marriage that could be possible right now in Tennessee: male and male, female and female, male or female. And we are all obligated, obviously, to comply with the Constitution. And although Obergefell is a grievously wrong decision, it currently, as we stand here, is the law of the land. And the tabling motion simply tries to sweep under the rug the fact that my Democratic colleagues do not want to address the fact that there is no compelling state interest to prohibit a male first cousin from marrying a male first cousin under Obergefell. That is an issue, respectfully, that my Democratic colleagues need to be able to defend if they wish to go ahead and pass this bill without the amendment attached to it, which would preserve the constitutionality of the act. So I would urge you to vote against the tabling motion and adopt the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right. The parliamentary situation is Representative Bolso has moved adoption of amendment number 1. Chairman Clemens has moved that motion to the table. We're voting on the tabling motion. All those in favor, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Aye, 69, 5 nays, none present, none voting.
The ayes have it. The amendment is tabled. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Jernigan, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members,